All right, welcome everybody to the Open Space Task Force meeting here, our second meeting. First, just want to say this meeting is being recorded by the Open Space Task Force. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. All right, we will do a call to order here. Completed call to order and a roll call. So Jeff, our Open Space Task Force members. Start with Francoise and go around.
Francoise, what else do I say? I'm here.
I guess that's it. You're a public member, and you're a member of the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee.
All right. Okay. Yep.
Mary.
Yep. Hi, I'm Mary Chickman. I'm chair of the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee.
And I'm Jonah Keene. I'm a member of the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee and the chair of this task force. Welcome to the public members who have joined us. We have the agendas posted online if you haven't seen it. We're going to run through that. And we have one other standing member, Emily, who hopefully will be joining us here too. I realized, Mary, I forgot to put on the agenda the approval of our minutes. We didn't have that on our very first agenda, of course. And so here on our second meeting's agenda, we do need to approve the minutes that Mary graciously typed up for us. So I guess first, just we have a motion to approve them.
Yes, I move that we approve the minutes for the June meeting.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Can we discuss first?
Yes, right. So let's have some discussion. Oh yeah, I did have one edit in my name spelling.
I'm just curious, given the need for us to make sure that the things that are, I think it needs to be on the agenda for us to do this, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
To approve the minutes.
I think so.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot to put it on because I copied the first agenda, and the first agenda didn't have it, of course, because we didn't have minutes. So I just forgot it for this one.
Right. But what I'm saying is because it's not on the agenda, I don't think we're allowed to do it.
Oh, really?
Until next month.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I didn't realize that. All right.
Not to be a stickler, but just I know that the city has been being very careful to make sure that, you know, things are listed on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, we will.
It's up to you.
Yeah,
because we have access to them on our drive. I know I went in there and I added an E to my name, for instance. Is that okay, or and then it's approved, or do we have to bring that up at the meeting and then it's corrected and then it's approved?
That's a good question. I don't know. That seems like that would be fine to me, especially if it's just a spelling as opposed to a content change.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you, Mary?
Yes.
In which case I could do the same with my last name, just has an A in it. Okay, well, we will plan to approve the meeting minutes for our first two meetings in September and stick with our agenda. Thanks, Mary, for keeping us on track. I see Emily is joined. Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Emily Boss. I work at Franklin Land Trust and its subsidiary, Mass Woodlands Institute. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission in town, and I live in Greenfield. Anything else I need to mention?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so we'll jump into our agenda here. The first item that we have is our task force membership. And I'm not quite sure if I think I might have missed something here. I tried to get everything we talked about in our last meeting done quickly because then I was off for 3 weeks. And I think I put together a little description of a call for new members. but I think, what did we talked about doing something with that description, but I can't remember what we talked about doing with it. Do folks remember what we were where we were gonna share that? Or thoughts on where we should share it, I guess, would be an alternate question.
I think we could ask the city for guidance. So I think asking Matt Conway would be probably a good approach.
Yeah.
To see if
All right.
there's some standard way of doing it.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, it was the headline in the recorder, so hope it got some attention that way. But I only heard of one person expressed interest to me via email, and I haven't heard back. Has anybody else heard anything after that first meeting from an interested new members? No.
Well, I don't think anybody knows about the committee quite yet. Well, I guess from the newspaper article, but
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
wondering. Is it from that? Yeah. Okay. So I will reach out to Matt and see about how to, if there's a standard way to recruit folks or where to post it. Other thoughts on next steps with recruiting new members?
Well, I mean, in the agenda, it says, and interest of any candidates present. So if anybody from the public is here, do we want to ask them now if they're interested and just start a list?
Yes, yeah, I think that's a good idea, just to clarify if anybody's here with that intention. So is there any members of the public that are here with that intention of interest in becoming an active member of this task force?
I am.
You are, Pat,
So,
great,
yeah, I'm interested in doing that.
great, thank you. Are any of the other public members attending with that as their interest, or just here? Okay, so Pat is the one interested member. So the other thing we have to, we don't have a process at the moment of determining how to add new people.
Should we have a little description of, so for instance, Pat said she's interested, but should she send us a message, like a written message saying, I'm interested and these are my qualifications?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and that we did put that in the little write-up that they would send a letter of interest to me.
Okay.
So that seems like a good next step for you, Pat, if just to email me a
Sure.
letter of interest.
Okay.
Do the task force members have thoughts on what we want our process to be beyond that after we receive letters of interest?
I would just be curious what the, intended process or the regular process is for subcommittees. I haven't dealt with them in a town before or city. Since usually the board or committee members are appointed by the mayor or the select board or whatever in a municipality. Just want to make sure that we are following whatever the appropriate steps are.
Yeah, did that come up in the SGIC meeting? Did someone bring that up? There's the question of if new members had to actually be members of SGIC or the Conservation Commission already, as the four of us already are.
Yeah, actually, I think George, who's the vice chair, asked that question at our last meeting.
Right.
And our process at the Sustainable Greenfield level is that the mayor does in fact appoint members. And so we were able to form our, this task force with existing members of SGIC and of the Conservation Commission. So that's a gray area. It might be worth asking Matt Conway that question as well. And
Yeah.
I'm guessing he might consult with Kathy Scott.
Right. And I think we talked about the idea too of if that is a barrier for us that we could have public non-voting members
Mhm.
that just attend all of the meetings as
Yes.
members. I don't anticipate, we don't have a lot of voting decisions that I foresee, but who knows how this will pan out. But I think they could have a very similar role as a voting member, being a non-voting member. So this seems like an option that we can fall back on. Great. I'll follow up with Matt on a couple of those things. Anything else that folks wanted to say on this, on the topic of member recruitment?
I think it would be good for us to decide how big a group we want.
Yeah.
Because I could imagine if we get several letters of interest, depending on how you're running the meetings, Jonah, and whether the members of the public will be full participants, but then non-voting members, maybe it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
But we did
Right.
talk about deciding on our group size.
Yep. Yeah, and I had suggested 5 or 7 as the number. And any thoughts on those two numbers, or if anyone thinks it should be higher?
What's the maximum? Is it 9?
I don't think there is a maximum.
I don't
Oh.
think, yeah,
There's all that interest. Just wanted to make sure we leave room for people from the rec committee or other boards that have spots on here in case, mostly we end up with people from the general public.
that is a good point. It would be nice to hold that, especially that rec commission spot, if they ever have somebody who's able to join. Yeah,
But if there's no maximum, that's not a concern.
Well, I don't know if there's no maximum, but like Sustainable Greenfield has 13 members. So we need 6 for a quorum.
Right.
Right.
I mean, we could if we set it at 5 voting members, then 3 of us 4 would always need to be present in order to have a quorum.
Mhm.
And then, like Jonah said, eventually maybe we'll fill that rec commission slot.
That seems good.
yeah, I suppose that could be it, so that we're a 5 voting member group. One of those spots is vacant and being held for rec, and that we would welcome some additional non-voting members to help complete the work.
Mhm.
Yeah, folks are feeling good about that plan.
Mhm.
All right.
Having this discussion reminds me that I should probably do something to get the task force listed on the website, on the city's website under Sustainable Greenfield. So I'll work on that.
Okay, great. All right. And one of the things on my to-do related to this as well is to take the rules and regulation of the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee and make a modified version for us. So I can describe the membership description that we just came up with in that.
Great.
I'll share a draft when we have it. All right. Anything else on membership? Okay, let's move on to the main event of today. So as folks may or may not know, this is just the second meeting of our task force here. And our focus right now is to hone in on our goals and figure out what we want to prioritize for the first part of our time working together. And so the 4 of us existing members worked on a spreadsheet that I will share on the screen here. Great, can everyone see that? So this is the existing OSRP, Open Space and Recreation Plan, our 7-year action plan from that document. And over here on the right-hand side, the 4 of us have a column that we went through and gave some personal thoughts on priorities, with 1 being highest priority and 3 being lower priority, but lower of the priorities that we think we should address. So I gave this a little thought of how we want to approach this. I put a new column that's the combined priority for us as a group. And I just went through fairly quickly and looked at some patterns of what I saw. And I think happy to discuss this process if we think this is a good way to go about it or not. So I went through and looked for places where all of us mark one of the actions as a priority of one level or another, and especially areas where we put 1's the highest priority. So doing this somewhat informal process, I put them in groups, A and B groups in this column J here, with A being those top few priorities that had at least 3 of us putting it as a 1 priority. And then the B groups being some other combination of either a couple of people putting it as a top priority or some mix of 2s and 3s. I'm curious to hear folks' thoughts on that as a system. I can show you what that turned out like. That left us with 3 top priorities, 2 of them being quite similar, which we can look at here in a second. And however many here, 8 or 9 of this B category. That was my initial thought on a way to look at this. Is there any thoughts on that process? Of folks think we want to look at it a little bit differently?
I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, so do I.
Okay, good. And so, my thinking on this is, we're trying to figure out our group-wide priorities. And it was interesting for me to look through this and see some, like Francoise, I noticed you had more in the improving existing open space than I had. And I think something that we had talked about initially is that, there's potential for us to be thinking about in 2 big categories of improving existing open space and creating new open spaces, sort of two big categories of what our work could be. So I guess my initial thinking when looking through this is some of these things may be projects that some of us individually or in smaller groups are excited or passionate about taking on and wanting to move forward. And I think that would be fabulous. Basically, all of this is based on what our interests are and how we want to move this forward, because there's so much to do. So the way that I was thinking about it is, as we think of it as our collective priorities being beyond that, and where we see some larger patterns. So those top few that rose to the top of having either three of us marking it as 1 or 2 1s and 2 2s here. 2 of them are fairly similar. Working to identify and acquire threatened environmentally sensitive areas using information available through a couple different tools. And then this other one is evaluating parcels based on their natural resource value, in order for us to think about how we prioritize protection of land, based on various characteristics. So I think both of these are, kind of overlapping in thinking about how we're looking to protect new land in the city. And I know for me personally, this is a motivating goal for why I am involved with this and think that this is a priority for this open space task force. So to me, this resonates as a top goal for us. And I know Mary and Emily both put it as ones. Is there anything else that folks would want to say about this and feeling like this is does it make sense for this to be a primary goal for us to focus on?
I guess I didn't put it as a 1 or 2 because I had no idea how to go about it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
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 But fine goal for sure.
Yeah. Great.
One,
And I
one
think
thing,
yeah, go ahead, Mary.
one thing about the goal is having done many mapping exercises and, identified lots of priority areas. That seems like a lot of times from a planning perspective, that's as far as it gets. So I'd love to be able to, if we do want to have this as one of our top priorities, to further define, actual action to move those, move it down the road. So it's not just a mapping exercise, which I love doing, but it would
Yep.
be great to have it better refined goal.
Yeah, and I think that first one does say work to identify and acquire. So there is acquire is in that one. But I definitely agree. I feel like that's as I mentioned before, there's some funding sources out there that we haven't been taking advantage of, particularly around open space related to conservation. So I think there's a real role we can play in moving these past the mapping stage, to actually trying to add new open space. Yeah.
There was another goal, and I don't know if it ended up rising to the top, but that I thought was a useful one to keep in mind, which was to facilitate communication among the commissions and
Right.
people in charge. And I feel like that might be something to add into the mix with these as a goal to facilitate not just the prioritization, like Mary said, but like moving into the implementation stage.
Yep. Yeah, great. So actually, yeah, so one thought I had is after we look at these three, if we look at the B, that's in the B's, the next section, we might want to look at those and pull out a few that seem like real keepers for us that we're excited to move to the top. So maybe, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And just what Emily just said made me think that, an additional exercise that wouldn't take too long would be to, once we're settled on these top priorities, is to go back through and scoop up any of the ones that didn't rise up to the top but are directly related to that goal. So
Yep. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yep. Great. And then, so the other one here that we all expressed some high-ish priority on here with two ones and two twos. Conduct an analysis of impervious surfaces, slopes, and stormwater drains to determine where the heaviest flows of stormwater enter storm drains, streams, and rivers. Determine areas where mass plantings of trees could capture and infiltrate rainfall. So this is definitely falls into the MVP world and in our adaptation work in the city. I don't know. I know, Mary, you had gone through, which was great, and put some notes on things that you thought where you thought progress was happening. Has anybody heard of any work being done on this? It seems like something that maybe someone's started to look at, or
I have not.
sure. Yeah. I guess it could be a question for Marlo, the DPW, to get a sense of where they're at with this.
Or, or maybe Eric.
Or Eric as well, yeah. But I feel good about this. I mean, I guess that's the other, for me, another sort of big picture goal category interest of mine with this group is thinking about climate adaptation. Yeah, seems like it's true for all of you with selecting this one. So I feel good about this being one of our top goals as well, fitting in with those others. Just want to make sure it resonates with everyone, since we all just went through kind of the quick process of putting the ones and twos in there. Folks feel good with this being a top priority for us.
Yeah.
This definitely fits with some of the themes that I'm most interested in, which are impacts on infrastructure through flooding.
Yeah.
The grant FERCog put in that I brought to the committee isn't exactly the same as this, but seems very complementary. And also with the prioritization of conservation land. So it kind of combines those themes. So if
Yeah.
that comes through, that could be, you know, an assist from some other entities that are working on something that would be relevant to us.
Yeah, great.
And just to add to that, I'm in the process for Greenfield Tree Committee working with the city, writing a grant proposal. It's relatively small because of the turnaround time, but it is money coming from EEA, and it pays not only for the planting and watering of trees, but it also pays for the removal of impervious surfaces, and even pays for the mini forest, the mini forest kind of craze that's happening right now. I don't recall the name of the Japanese
The
person
food
who.
forest concept?
No, not food forest. It's Miyazaki forest. Anyway, so that could, this recommendation could definitely get funding from that grant in future years. For this year, we're keeping it rather on the small side.
Great. Good. Okay. So let's if we feel good about these as some top priorities for us. I also, I guess, just add, I think that's plenty too, right? Like there's only so much we can do. But as Emily and Mary both said, there's some of these other ones directly relate to them as well.
Before we go to that, those three, I mean, we wouldn't be doing that work. It's Department of Planning, DPW, Concom. How do we get them to work on this? I mean, we don't really have any authority on that, do we?
Well, I guess it's a good conversation for us to have. I was imagining that we would be doing some of this, and where it's outside of our jurisdiction or our purview, we would be involving others, and so we would be spending time with maps and prioritizing and looking at parcels, and then bringing it to planning or DPW or whatever the particular topic is. And saying, hey, we've worked on this and we see this as priority. We see potential here. There's this funding source, or that we could help facilitate it happening. So
yeah,
I think as came up in the previous meeting, the Conservation Commission as well would, that they would, if we were to acquire a new land, it would, potentially would be there. It would be done in collaboration with the Conservation Commission, who would officially take charge of that new land. It was conservation related land. But yeah, how the process actually plays out, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how successful we are, but that is the hope. So with this group, it's interesting for me. It was interesting to think about how to prioritize the next category, since those other ones kind of stood out as the most interest from the four of us. Um, we have some that have a lot of 2s and 3s, so none of us think of it as the number one priority, but all of us think of it as a priority. Is it something that we want to, how much do we want to move it along? So my thought was we could just look at each of these, there's not too many of them, and just have a little discussion and see how much we think it's worth sort of bumping to the next level if we want to. I think we could have this tier 2, we could have tier 1 and tier 2 goals, with tier 2 being more opportunistic, that we're focused on the tier 1 goals as far as our main work, but we know we have some of these other tier 2 ones that if the opportunity may arise that we can help to move forward. So in my mind that makes sense, but I think we could look through these tier 2 ones now and see if we wanted to elevate any of them to the tier 1. I'm using ones and letters and numbers interchangeably here. Get confused. So does that sound good to folks? Just if we spend a few minutes going through each of these?
Yep, that's great.
Okay, so this first one that we all express some level of interest in is to increase volunteers working in Greenfield's urban green spaces, open spaces, hiring a volunteer coordinator, and working to manage volunteers to help maintain public street trees, gardens, parks, conservation areas, and annual cleanups, planting events, invasive plant control. And maintaining an online site to connect volunteer opportunities with existing resources and organizations. So I think that's come up in various places many times as something that Greenfield would like to see, some type of organization of volunteers. And Mary's note here, this is a critical need. And helping the rec department who relies on DPW to do maintenance. So any discussion on that? Any thoughts on if we wanted to bump up that to the top priority for us?
Well, it seems like there's other committees or commissions who have that same goal, right? So it would be interesting to communicate with other boards and committees and see if they are interested, they would be interested in working on that with us, or if we're the only ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I wonder which do you have other ones in mind?
I just remember seeing it in our other, in the sustainable group that
Right.
that also happened there. And I bet I bet that the Conservation Commission would be interested, right, Emily, that is especially to maintain lands that are under the Concom's purview.
Yeah, that could be a real benefit.
Yeah.
A value I see in this one is that it's not just accomplishing a specific action, but it's setting in motion a principle that would help increase the amount of people working on things in general. So
Right.
when I saw things like that, that sort of put them higher in the priority for me, for them to be in the pipeline.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
I think for me to say yes or no to elevating any of these, I would want to know what all of them are, because we don't want to elevate everything and then
Right. So you think it'd be beneficial just to read through them all once?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other ones are shorter, so yeah, won't take too long. Okay. Identify and protect parcels adjacent to conservation areas to reduce forest fragmentation. Work to acquire land in environmental justice areas to increase accessibility to open space opportunities within the city. Acquire 1 or 2 vacant lots along Federal Street to convert into green spaces and to provide places for pedestrians to rest in beauty in a commercial area. Develop through local zoning an agricultural overlay district in order to encourage the preservation of agricultural land. inventory all agricultural land, including active and fallow cropland, pastures, orchards, and its infrastructure, including housing, to assess and encourage its potential preservation. Establish a practice of cooperation and communication between city departments during regular maintenance activities and when issues come up on city-owned properties to prevent impacts to natural resources. Prioritize ADA accessibility improvements and projects at existing open space sites. Integrate the goals of the open space plan into city policies and plans and make policies consistent with these goals and establish a coordinated mechanism to review and make recommendations regarding city policies and projects that will involve or impact open space and recreation. Conduct a process to map and prioritize city parcels for conservation, including important farmlands, recreational lands, woodlands, drinking water areas, and wildlife habitat. Consider zoning changes to add a river corridor overlay district to ensure public safety and healthy watershed function along the Green River. I'm reading through those, I'm realizing and thinking of what one of you had said earlier, that a couple of these tie in pretty directly to the ones that we've already highlighted as a top
Yes.
priority. So identify and protect parcels adjacent to conservation areas. I feel like that, I mean, just falls into that same realm of identifying parcels to protect. So does it make sense for us just to move those to A's and sort of work on consolidating all of that into a single?
Yeah, some of those seem
Cool.
like sub-objectives, like.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Could I just ask, as the note taker, am I going to have access to this, your prioritization sheet? Because it's really hard for me to flip back and forth between my notes and your screen sharing, and then I'm trying to look at the Google Doc and it's not working out for me to capture the notes. So
Right. What would be best?
can I just have access to this afterward, or?
Isn't
This-
it the same one that we used before?
This is the same sheet that we have access to,
Okay.
this Google
Okay.
Doc.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. So you can hop in there after. Yep.
Okay.
So should we just go through and make sure we all agree on the ones that are basically sub goals of the goals we are, those priority ones? So this one, I think we agreed was a sub goal, acquiring land in environmental justice areas.
I agree.
Is that considered a sub goal? I would think so.
Yeah.
Mary, you're the one that didn't have that marked. Do you agree with that?
I think because I felt like they were repetitive of the
Yeah.
larger goal, so I stopped
Okay.
checking that because
Yeah.
I wanted to put my ones and twos in other places.
Yeah, perfect. Great. So that makes sense. And then acquiring 1 or 2 vacant lots in Federal Street. That feel like that's also, this is all in the category of acquiring new open space.
I suppose, sure.
Is that? Then this one's a little different, developed through local zoning and agricultural overlay district in order to encourage the preservation of agricultural land.
So we have several, that deal with agriculture, and like I'm particularly interested in that, but that maybe could be, maybe I could speak with the Ag Commission and see if they have any interest, and then maybe that could be one of their, maybe they would want to work on that rather than being our priority, but I would be willing to help them.
Right, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
So not put it as an A for us, maybe.
Right. Great. Yeah, so we'll check with the Ag Commission on their work on that. Great. And same with the next one, the inventory of agricultural land. And you have a note there, Mary, you think that was already done?
Yeah, so Mount Grace was doing a series of ag inventories in the area, and I believe they may have done Greenfield, although a quick search, I couldn't find it, but it could just be. When I went to Mount Grace's website and looked for those ag inventories, they just weren't available anymore. So somebody would have to go dig them up.
Okay.
But it would be a good place to start if somebody's going to work on this, to see if they can find that inventory from, several years ago.
Right. All right. So does that make sense to leave that as a talk with the Ag Commission about that one as well?
Mhm.
All right.
I'd be happy to reach out to Mount Grace. I'm pretty sure I worked with them about those inventories, so I think I know who to talk to and
Oh,
can
great.
find out. And
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Emily. All right. So this is the one that you had mentioned, Emily. Establish a practice of cooperation and communication between city departments to prevent impacts to natural resources on city-owned properties. So I feel like it doesn't fall exactly under the existing ones, but I'm one of the people who did not mark it as a priority, but I could be on board with that being a priority, a higher level priority, if we felt that made sense.
It's just, we talked about that again, remember, in the Sustainable Committee, and Carol, Carolyn, Carol?
Carol.
Yeah. She was really adamant about that, when the city takes on projects, that it would be good if she could look at it and make sure that it, followed our conservation and our protection goals.
Yeah.
So that's why I put
Sure.
it as a one. It seems like that should happen, that, the DPW shouldn't start a project, draining something, and they're the only ones who look at it, and nobody else. Like Carol should look at it, maybe the Concom should look at it, maybe some of us. I find that's important.
for building permits, there's often a process where, the Conservation Commission has to sign off. And that is when land is being considered for APR, for agricultural preservation restriction, there's additional funding available if those checklists are in place in the municipality. So it'd be interesting just to look at what are the processes along those lines that are existing here, and see if we could make some recommendations about ways to beat that up, to have it be formalized that there's communication, or what Francois outlined.
Mary, do you have any thoughts on that? On
I do
elevating
have
it?
I have lots of thoughts on it.
Yeah.
It's one of the toughest nuts to crack, is to understand what the policies and practices are, where they exist, who knows about them, when they're followed, when they're not followed. And I think it would be a huge undertaking, really, for anybody to try to get their arms around this.
So maybe we could focus on specific things like conservation of land. Maybe the things that are central to our mission, rather than every single process that happens.
Right. Yep. So yes, making a note there. So yes, specific aspects that relate to our work.
There's certain times too when there's acquisitions of land by the city that there has been a lot of unclarity about the purpose of it, who gets to weigh in, what, and there's even some state laws that are changing things for the better. So it seems like a good opportunity, at least, to approach this in terms of conservation of land, to help make sure it's a more robust process, and to make sure it's more equitable for the people involved.
Yeah. Great. So how about for now we bump it to an A, and we can evaluate.
Yeah.
In a minute here, we look at our A's again. Okay, prioritize ADA accessibility improvements in projects at existing open space sites. I don't know much about this. It seems like it's something that I know just right here that the recreation department has on their radar, that they just added some accessible parking around Beacon Field. But I'm not sure the extent of how much they're prioritizing it.
Seems like there's some room in our process for us not to, like we were looking at the agricultural resources before, to not be the entity that's, making it happen. There often will be things that we aren't empowered, or, maybe we don't even have the right people on the right commission here to do it. But that we are able to offer accountability and request information about progress. And maybe, that can make things happen, even if we're not actually taking action or hiring people or doing the work. And this is definitely a category that I think would be relevant for that, for us to be able to, talk to the commissions that are working on it, find out, maybe, ask them for a list of what properties has this been done for, what hasn't been done for. And that it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but at least it allows there to be them to feel like other people are interested. And since this is meeting publicly and we may have members of the public, that gives people more of an opportunity to weigh in on it.
Right.
But two things that came to mind as Emily was speaking. One thing is that I think as part of the open space and recreation plan update, that cities are required to do a ADA accessibility assessment of all of the recreation properties, if I'm not mistaken. It's not something that I served on the open space committee when that plan was getting updated recently. And it's not something the committee did, but I think it was something that either the rec department did or maybe FERCog did or something. So we could look there to see if that's a resource to get a first sort of understanding of where we're at with rec properties and accessibility. What was the other thing? Oh, the other thing is just as a task force, we could also make recommendations. For instance, we could comment on the CPA funding requests and make sure that, new rec facilities, for instance, are fully accessible, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this, it's making me think there's something else. Well, I guess the one right before it, where both seem that in the category of us helping with accountability to some degree. And so I wonder if it's a separate bucket for us, where it's not as, I don't know, maybe not, just thinking it through. It's not quite as much active work as it is putting out to some key place people and being involved, like you described, Mary, and showing up to CPA meeting or whatever it is. And we keep these on our radar as something that we're looking at, as opposed to the same level of active moving it forward. I don't know. Just thinking it through. They seem kind of similar in that sense.
So are you suggesting that similar to what we're doing with the top priority, where there's several things that are going to get, incorporated into that? Or are you suggesting that another top priority is this role of advocate, and I hate the term watchdog, but just, you get the sense of what I'm saying, that some of these things might fall underneath that, like the practice of cooperation communication between city departments, like ADA.
Right,
Things like
exactly.
that.
Yeah, that would be sort of a separate yeah, that we are looking out for preventing negative impacts to natural resources, to making sure open space is accessible, like a few of these key things that we are keeping an eye out for. But yeah, but maybe it's a separate, like it's a, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like it's,
I like thinking of it as a separate category of work.
yeah,
You know, maybe in our agendas, we could have a section for this type of thing that we report on, you know, if
Yeah.
someone's gone to another meeting or there's been a report. And that's different than if we have a subcommittee that's been doing a prioritization of the conservation land or the natural heritage parcels. And
right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Francoise, do you have any input on this?
Really?
Yeah. So maybe well, let me put these, put it as an A for now, and we'll organize it slightly differently. All right, so these last few integrate the goals of the open space plan into city policies and plans, making policies consistent with these goals, make recommendations regarding city policies that involve or impact open space and recreation.
To me, that seems like similar work. Similar
Right.
to what we were just.
But be right, but a little more broad. It's because it's all of the goals of the open space plan.
it
Yeah,
kind of
but-
feels like it's describing a mechanism by which we're supposed to work, if that makes sense. You know, making policies and plans.
right. Yeah, so maybe it would be similar to those, and that is more in that advocate role. Does that make sense?
It is pretty broad.
It's quite broad. Yeah.
I think it does, though, spell out that we were empowered to, you know, help work on policies as well as, you know, projects.
Right. Yeah. Well, for the moment, let me put it in that same category. Got it again. And then this one, conduct a process to map and prioritize city parcels for conservation, including farmlands, reclands, woodlands.
That seems like it belongs with that same.
The first group, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite sure how it's different.
I think it should say city owned parcels. So they're
yes.
already owned, but they're not protected.
Right. Okay. Yes, city owned. That makes sense. Great. And so the last one here was the zoning changes to add a river corridor overlay district. And the word is just consider. It's not a strong action word there. So this is one that falls directly into the FERCOG program, right? So if that goes through, this would be worked on, right?
Right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, that falls into the opportunistic of there's an opportunity coming down the line here. So we're just waiting now to hear about that being accepted or approved. Is that right, Emily? Yeah. So maybe we make that a top priority, dependent on the FERCOG program happening. Does that make sense?
That sounds good.
All right, so now that leaves us with more A's, but some of these are will be grouped together. So maybe as the next step, since we're just about at a time here, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but I could put these, I could reorganize these into the way that we've been talking about them, into the basically a couple different categories with sub goals. And then on our next meeting, we can approve that as our priorities for the coming amount of time, year, whatever amount of time we like. Does that sound good?
Yes.
And anything else on your last thoughts on this? So Mary, you had also suggested we go back and look at ones that didn't make it onto this, didn't get coded as A's or B's to see if some of them fit nicely in with these categories that were created as priorities.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that that's a together task. One of us could do that.
Yep. Yeah.
It's not like we're deliberating or anything. We're just trying to, organize.
Organize it, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to take a first crack at that, to organize this into those categories and then look through and see if there's any that we missed that fit into these. I think that then the final step would be if we had we've talked about some of the other plans that Greenfield has that could have some action items that also fit in here but aren't laid out in the OSRP. So it's something else we can think about if we wanted to include those at some point. Great. Well, I feel pretty good about that as some good progress for figuring out what we're going to be focused on, starting with our regular meetings in September. Is that any other thoughts that you all have?
I feel like this was a productive and efficient way to narrow down a very broad set of tasks.
Great.
So
Yeah, awesome. Great. Okay. So the next item on our agenda is looking at some maps. So I'll leave the screen share up. And we had put on the agenda to just sort of touch base on existing open space and sort of make sure we're all on the same page on what our starting point is. So I'm not a super map expert. I know Mary, you have a lot of map expertise. So let me know if there's a better way of doing this as we go along. And Emily, I assume you have a lot of map experience as well. So I'm just using Mass Mapper here, looking at Greenfield, and there's the primary purpose. Doesn't that feel like an interesting one to look at when looking at open space in Greenfield? To me, being someone who's focused on open space for conservation, it definitely stands out. Looking at the categories over here, conservation being this teal color, there's not a whole lot of open space that falls into the conservation category. There's just basically it's over on the ridge here is the main teal that has that primary purpose marked as I'm sorry, that's conservation and recreation. I had the wrong, that's the combination. This green color is the conservation. So there's a little bit more of that. But it also stands out to me is how much agriculture there is some nice agriculture protection. These are mostly APRs that are through there. And a fair bit of recreation, which includes golf courses and other recreation land. And then there's a couple
This
patches of cemeteries.
This is open space. This is open space, but not necessarily protected open space.
Right. A lot of it is.
Like golf course, the golf course, which is now just.
Right.
I don't think it's protected.
So this is open space. This is open space by level of protection. So the dark green is the in perpetuity.
Got it.
Yeah. So there's a fair bit, but yeah, the golf course here and here not protected. Obviously. And then there's some limited, although not very much, there is some limited protection. Which one? I'm not sure what that's a cemetery that's falling there under the limited protection. I'm not sure how that, I don't know what the status of cemeteries are. But there's that big one down there by the fairgrounds that has the limited protection status. Does anybody else know more about that?
Yeah.
There's only one city-owned cemetery. That's the one on Federal Street.
Federal Street here, yeah.
And the rest are all privately owned. So I don't know what exactly the limited protection means.
Yeah. Oh, this is too, actually. Both of these are cemeteries, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting to me when looking at this from the conservation perspective. I know the goals that we have somewhere map protection of this ridge line here, which we've done a pretty good job with for a good chunk of it. And there's also talk of protection of this western the slope heading up to Shelburne, which has a lot less protection on it. And anything else that stands out there, folks? Observations or comments that we have about our existing open space status or other map layers we want to look at?
It'd be interesting to look at the parcels that have no protection and see if there are particular reasons why they haven't been, or if they're in a, sort of liminal space in terms of sometimes when things are acquired, it says in the deeds, this is for conservation. And sometimes it's a little unclear. I know Travis went through and did a lot of work on the publicly owned parcels by the city.
Yeah.
And like looking at what the status of them was, and I can't remember if he focused on the ones that are owned by the Conservation Commission per se, or if it was broader than that. Have you seen that, Jonah?
Yeah, he shared, which I think I put it in our shared drive. If I didn't, I can.
Okay.
He collected a ton of the
Lot of
documentation, a lot of work. Yeah, it's awesome. Which is a good reminder too, that I know that he and you, Emily, and the Conservation Commission are excited about this kind of work too. So we do want to make sure that we're staying in touch and working together.
I'm going to be reporting in after each of these meetings to the Concom. So
Great.
I'm trying to take notes. A question I had actually was the prioritization list.
Yeah.
I presume we'll be sharing that with the other boards.
Yeah.
So maybe we can just keep that in mind as far as when and how that'll happen, because I'm sure they'll would love to hear about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So I guess after our September meeting, our next meeting, after it's been reorganized and we approve it, then we should share it out. That's a good point. Great. Something else, when I look at this, just thinking about, connectivity is a big part of thinking about land protection and wanting to have having our protected lands connected. And I know some of you were involved in the conversation we were having with some of this land here on the northern part of the ridge, where there's opportunity for protecting some more land, as we already have a nice connected stretch of land along the ridge. There's definitely potential to try to see continuation of that along this edge of the town, and even up through the river. I don't know does anybody know what this is here? Oh, Boy Scouts Camp Avery.
Yeah.
Is that active? I don't know anything about it.
I'm not sure how active it is. I've been pointed in that direction to talk to them about potentially conserving it or working with the town.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're like thinking about it, but certainly people in the area maybe are thinking that
Okay.
would be a good idea.
Right.
Is that the one on Scout Road?
I'm not sure what road it's on. It's on the Fall River. Oh,
Scout
no, this
Road.
is on the
Yeah.
Greenfield River.
Scout Road.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
it is the Fall River. Yeah.
Yeah, Fall River Scout Road. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're actively using it. I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Which wouldn't preclude them from a conservation restriction if that was of interest, depending on details. So we could see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's for me, it's also interesting to think about. We have the sort of broader landscape of the city, and these north-south corridors potentially along the Fall River, Connecticut River corridor, and then the hillside on the west. And then we also have, as we saw in some of those the goals that we were looking at, some more specific in-town open space needs. So I think they both are very appropriate for us to be working on, but very kind of different goals of what why we're focused on protecting them, but still makes sense in the larger open space committee. I know you had said, Mary, in your notes that you're particularly interested in this parcel here, where Beacon and Federal meet. It does seem like a nice spot for a little greenery, and especially compared to what it currently is just a bit of gravel and pavement.
Yeah, it's owned by Florence Savings Bank.
Yeah, but I don't know what their intentions are there.
They bought it several years ago, and then I don't know if things just stalled out with them, expanding or what, but yeah.
As a potential site for a branch?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
that was several years ago, and there it sits. So
right. And it's not huge. It definitely would be a small branch, but it would be a great spot for a little greenery, because there's definitely not a lot of opportunity there to sit and rest, and that's a nice shady spot along Federal Street. So that'd be great.
I'll just mention I have another area of interest, which is along the Shelburne Road and Wheeler Brook. We have a couple of city-owned parcels along there, so it's down a little further south.
Oh, Wheeler Brook down here, I see.
Yeah. It's just such an amazing brook and an amazing, beautiful area. And I had just recently heard that there may be more donations of land somewhere in that area, either along Shelburne Road or along Mohawk Trail. Had you seen that at all? Anybody? Emily, maybe?
What was it, Mary?
There's some landowners who proposed donating land to the city, and I don't remember now if it was on Mohawk Trail or if it was on Shelburne Road or somewhere in between, but that would be potential for connecting perhaps more parcels to that already protected area.
I think I have heard something about a property in that area, but I don't know any specifics.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are some bigger parcels along there, which is interesting to see. And this,
Yeah.
this was, what was this? This was newer. But yeah, it's owned by the town now. Yeah, it's,
There might have been actually one that we talked about at the Conservation Commission most recently.
uh-huh.
I'll check in about that.
Yeah, that is a neat area to check out for sure. But any other areas of interest that anybody has?
I think you hit on the big ones that I have, that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
There's a lot, obviously, of historical and particularly indigenous cultural relevance up in the northwest part,
Mm-mm.
with the research going on about the battlefield site and other settlements. So there's a lot of important areas there from that.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Good. Well, I think it's always nice just to touch base on a map. Just to make sure we're all thinking about the same stuff here. All right. So if there's nothing else to add on that, I will stop sharing my screen. And we can move along. So next item on the agenda is any announcements. Is there anything coming up that folks want to share?
Greenfield Tree Committee is hosting a tree walk downtown tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 6 p.m. meeting at the town common. It's being led by guest speaker Dan Zomick, and we'll explore 16 trees in and around Main Street tomorrow night. Rain or shine.
Nice. Hopefully
Um,
shine.
I received a brochure from the Green River Watershed Alliance, which is currently a only Vermont group, but would like to extend to the Massachusetts part of the watershed. And they've got a grant and they have some events. Right now they're not concentrating on Greenfield. They're hoping to get more money where they will do they will concentrate on Greenfield. However, I was looking at the programs and two of them are in Greenfield, and one is the Green River Watershed's Deep History on August 10th, and that's looking at the geology. That's taking place at GCC. And then September 8th, there's a floodplain forest exploration, and that's at the swimming area. And that's about, I think, removing or getting rid of invasive plants there. Wisty Rohrabacher is going to be leading that one. So I thought that would be interesting to us. And I was wondering, is there something we can do to help broadcast these events?
Well, we do have the Sustainable Greenfield has a Facebook page. So you could send them my way, and I could ask the person who administers that if they feel it's appropriate to share it that way.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Great idea.
Great. Any other announcements?
I plan on hopefully attending the next Ag Commission's meeting.
Oh,
Just to
great.
see, just to find out what they're working on and maybe introduce some of the stuff that we'd like to do.
Wonderful. That's great. All right. Moving along to public comment. Anybody here who would like to join the conversation? So Pat, we're clear. If you just wanted to send me a little letter of interest to my email. Do you have my email?
Yeah, I'm just not sure. I can't remember how I got this. I got it from Francoise. So I'm not sure if I can't see it right now. I'm not sure if your email's on there. So
Yeah,
I can check in with Francoise because she has it.
she
right,
has it. Yep.
Francoise?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just my full name straight through at Gmail. So you feel free to
Okay,
just send something along.
right,
And
I
then
will.
and then at our next meeting we'll talk about that.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your interest. Yeah, Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie Duclos, 166 Chapman Street. I just had some areas of concern down here with blocked culverts and some abandoned city property that has recently caused some flooding. So I'm wondering if that could be looked at, and I'm really interested in the two events that Marie Francois had mentioned. And if you could include your email on the chat, I'd love to reach out to you. Thanks.
Stephanie, as far as the drainage, I think you commented at our last meeting, right, about some of that drainage issues.
Yes,
Yeah. And did you have any luck? Did you reach out to DPW? Did you have any luck getting through to somebody at the city?
I did speak with Mitchell By. He did come out and meet with me and walk the site. I did send him a 1877 map of the existing culvert back then. Some of the older maps are in City Hall under vault that can identify my areas of concern that were on a map at one point, but no longer exist on some of the current maps. Thanks.
Was there a next step discussed or?
Sorry, I'm having echo.
Oh, yeah.
No, I had reached back out to Mitch. He was going to address the Conservation Commission, perhaps about adding it to agenda item.
Okay. Great. Yeah, it seems like that's a good path forward, and more than this particular group is able to assist with. So it's great that it's moving forward there.
As the note taker, can I ask for clarification? I don't know who Mitch is. You were breaking up when you were talking, Stephanie.
Mitchell By works in the planning department under the Conservation Committee.
It's the conservation agent.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for attending and putting that up. Any other public comment? All right. Well, thanks folks for joining these couple of summer Zooms. We'll be getting into our regular schedule next, starting in September. So there's no August meeting. In September 12th, we'll be starting with our regular schedule on second Thursdays at 4:45. Kind of a strange time. You may say, why 4:45? Because we want to be out of the room. There's a 6:30 meeting in the same room, so we just wanted to leave a little bit of a buffer. So we're going to start at 4:45 and be done at 6:15. folks are still welcome to Zoom in. It will be done. It will be hybrid meetings going forward. So folks are welcome to show up in person at the second floor of the town hall, or the Zoom link that'll be posted on the agenda for each meeting.
Jonah?
Yeah.
I believe there might be some requirement that, I don't know, something like 2 of us need to be in person or something for it to be an official meeting. You might want to ask Matt about that as well.
Add that to my list of Matt questions.
I
Okay.
don't know that for sure, but I feel like that is something I heard.
Okay. Okay, thanks. It's
Yeah,
good
you're
to know.
welcome.
Great. And so for our next meeting will definitely be we'll be approving 2 meetings of minutes, and we'll also be approving our goals, our priorities. If there's any other suggestions for topics for us, pass them along to me. I'll send along a draft agenda. I assume the topic that I'll have for us is just starting to think about our process for getting to work on some of our priorities too. So that'll be
Well, yeah, what about increasing our membership? Are we gonna make any progress in between? Or just looking, maybe we could be looking, hopefully we'd be looking at letters at that point, or
yeah. So I'm going to ask Matt about that and clarify what's possible in between, and I'll send an email just clarifying.
Okay.
Yeah, what's possible for us. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Great. If there's nothing else, do we have a
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody.